Welcome to today's program, doctors. Today what I want to talk about is what are the three things as a injury practice business owner do you need to do exceptionally well in order to truly expand in the injury market and do it so that it's easy, so that it's not so stressful. There's three basic skill sets that you have to have. I'm going to lay those skill sets out today. They're very simple. The first skill set is that you as a clinician have to be extremely good at what you do. You as a clinician have to be able to do a couple things well. One, you have to be able to diagnose all of the injuries that the patient has. And you can't miss injuries and ligament injuries, simple ligament injuries. You have to understand that there's a disc herniation and then there's excessive motion, and you have to understand picking up both of these findings so that you can determine easily the severity and location of any ligament injury that the patient has. You have to be able to diagnose these things incredibly well. Then you have to be able to treat them incredibly well. That's the next thing that is there that you have to be really good at. And it's the first thing to treatment and treatment results is really having a sound understanding, a great understanding of what the underlying condition is that you're treating. The better you understand the underlying condition, the better your treatment results are going to be. So you got to be able to diagnose well. You've got to be able to treat well. And today in the injury market, you're in a medical legal situation. So there's two things you have to do well there. One, you have to document well because your documentation determines patient benefits. Your documentation determines the benefits that the patient is going to be able to have access to and potentially get. Your documentation determines whether the plaintiff attorney has a hard time or not. Your documentation determines whether the defense attorney has a hard time or not. Your documentation depends whether the insurer has a hard time or not. So you've got to be able to document extremely well, and you've got to be able to express yourself simply when in a deposition or a court trial setting. So you as a doctor, you got to be able to diagnose all the injuries the patient has. You have to be able to get great treatment results with these conditions on a regular basis. And I mean great treatment results. I mean a patient that goes through your treatment 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. I don't care how long it takes. But that when they come out, they don't have chronic pain. They don't have any pain. They don't have any activities of daily living disorders. They don't have any duties under duress or loss of enjoyment of life factors. That's what you have to be able to do when the person comes out of treatment. You have to be able to do that regularly. And then you have to be able to document extremely well. Now, if you, the doctor, can do this, and you can do this with a high degree of confidence and a high degree of predictability, and you can do this routinely with patients, that's step number one in your business. Because you are the person that produces the product of a injury clinic. And that's the results of the injury clinic. Two, the second biggest thing that you have to be able to do is you have to have a well-trained team. You have to be able to train your team. Your team is super, super important, and training your team is one of the highest return on investment activities that you can actually do. So everyone trains their staff. Everyone trains the front desk or the receptionist how to answer the phone, or the billing person how to code for bills and how to send out and make phone calls to insurance adjusters and to follow up on denials. Everyone trains their staff to be able to do these things, or to be able to help your patient actually fill out the paperwork correctly, or to be able to route the patient to the room correctly, or to be able to schedule the patient correctly. Those are all routine things. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm talking about now is the ability to train your staff to answer questions about the injury work that you do as good or better than you do. When I say better, sometimes the staff are better because they're simpler, and they put things in layman's terms a lot easier. You need to start doing that as well. But your staff needs to understand what the patient is going through. They need to understand the reality of the patient, whether it's day one, which is one of your most important visits. What is that patient going through? When they first get into your clinic, what is the experience that they're going to go through? What's the experience with the first phone call, routing them in, your paperwork, gathering their insurance information, introducing you, the doctor, in their first visit, in your consultation, examination procedures, imaging procedures if you do them internally, treatment procedures, what they're going to be told, the information that you provide them with to take home, how they're rescheduled. Every person in your staff needs to understand the high points of what needs to get communicated in each one of the visits. If you don't, or your staff does not understand it, you don't have a team around you, you're seriously cutting the amount of referrals you can get, you're seriously cutting the amount of the reduction of problems that you would have with reimbursement, you're seriously cutting down the results that you can get with the patients as far as their physical results. You are cutting down a lot of things that simply don't need to be cut down. Training your staff is one of the most important things you can do, but training them specifically in what makes you unique as an injury provider. So when you, the doctor, are in the room and you say something to the patient and they leave and they walk down the hall and all of a sudden 3 or 4 questions pop up about, well, what did he say? What was wrong with this ligament condition? He said that I had a permanent condition of some kind. What does that mean? And if you can't go to the person who's rescheduling, or you can't go to the billing person, you can't go to anybody in your clinic and have that patient ask that question and then have them get a great answer to the question, you're seriously losing money, and you're seriously losing results, and you're seriously causing yourself a lot of stress that's unnecessary simply because you haven't trained your staff. So training your staff is incredibly important. They can be a great source of internal referrals. But they have to understand, especially with spinal ligament injury patients, they have to understand what those patients are going through. So I said there's 3 things. You have to be able to, you yourself, the doctor, has to be able to get great products. Then you have to train your staff, and they have to be able to do incredible work within your clinic. Because remember, injury work is a team activity. Now, if you get those 2 down really, really well, then you have to be able to market. And marketing is nothing more than determining how you want to be perceived in the market. So that's all marketing is. It's how you want to be perceived in the market. A marketing strategy is strategizing how you want to be perceived in the market. So if I'm looking at a patient, how do I want to be perceived in the market? Well, I want to be perceived as the best doctor you can possibly go to. And what does that mean? That I'm fast, I'm effective, I don't miss things, and I make the rehabilitation very easy, simple to understand, and I get great results. I document so that anything that the patient is involved with, a plaintiff attorney, a defense attorney, their insurance carriers, their state work comp carriers, anything that they're involved with has a lot easier time with it. So that's how I want to be perceived. I want to be perceived as somebody who doesn't miss injuries. If I'm going out to attorneys, I want to be perceived as somebody who documents so incredibly well that it makes their life super, super easy. If I want to be looked at by insurers, I want to be looked at somebody that's honest, ethical, and highly professional. That's how I want to be looked at. So that's called a marketing strategy, deciding how you want to appear to your market. That's what marketing is. And then a marketing plan is deciding how you want to get that perception out to your community. Some of you want to advertise. Advertise is where you put that perception or that message on paid or unpaid communication lines. So a paid communication line might be a radio commercial or a TV commercial, or you might do some sort of a newspaper ad. Social media, you might be doing all kinds of posting. You might actually take and be sending newsletters out to your patients, past patients. Highly a remunerative thing to be able to do. You need to communicate to your patient base on a regular basis. So that's called marketing. So the 3 things that doctors have to be able to do really well to really excel in this market, and to excel in this future market, number 1 is really important. You got to be a great doctor. And if you feel like you don't have skill sets to do that, or you have uncertainties in that area, you need to plug those holes. Then you need to be able to train your staff. You don't understand how to train your staff? Then you have to look for resources. Our Smart Injury Doctors and our Smart Injury Doctor program is trained to accelerate your growth in all three of these areas. But you got to train your staff, and then you got to market. And market becomes really, really easy once you understand. And if you can do the step 1 and step 2, train your staff and be really good at what you do and get great results, and also document in a way that you fully understand is exactly what everyone in the market needs, what the plaintiff attorney needs, what the insurers need to make their lives easier, you become a really high valuable commodity in the market. You really do. And then it becomes easy. It's super, super easy to start to expand. You're training your staff, good. You're understanding the procedures. It's easy to scale. It's easy to put associates in behind you. It's easy to bring in new staff, added staff, replace staff, train staff, retrain staff. It's easy to do all of those things. And if you understand how you want to be perceived and you're starting to put that perception in the market, you've got it made in the injury market. And the injury market, in my personal experience and my professional experience, is the most fun market to be involved in because it's a very high purpose game. Patients that are injured have a 50% chance of never fully recovering, so they need the best doctors to be treating them. And that's what made that game super, super fun for me, because I wanted to be that doctor. I run a program called the Smart Injury Doctors Programs, and that's why doctors are attracted to the program, because that's what they want to be. And those are the type of people that we attract. Now, remember, I'm going to give you one last point on this podcast, and I keep these podcasts short and to the point. Marketing does one really neat thing. It repels what you don't want, and it attracts what you do want. So marketing, think of marketing, remember, it's how you perceive the market. So if we took a high dollar dry cleaner, it's going to repel generally the people that would go to a laundromat. Right? And the laundromat would repel the people that are going to go to the high dollar dry cleaner. You have to decide professionally what you want to be and how you want to be perceived, because once you make that decision and once you start going down to that path, you will attract what you want to attract. Right now, if you're getting things that you don't like, you need to look at how you're being perceived and what you're putting out, because that's what you're attracting. I like to always work with high-level people. That's what I like to work with, and I think you will too. So doctors, 3 things in business: you, your staff, and marketing are key things to being able to grow your injury practice today in today's market, and for the next decade or decades to come. It's going to be those 3 things. Doctors, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to this podcast today. If you would, I'd like to know, what are the challenges that you face in personal injury practice? What are the things that you don't like? Or if you could take a magic wand and go, hey, if this wasn't involved with personal injury, I'd enjoy it a lot more. Put those comments, put those things down below in the comments section. I read them, and it gives me an idea of what you might like to hear about in one of our future podcasts. Doctors, thank you very much for your time today.